Hey friends, I am back with another video. I am continuing my Frodo cosplay. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the cloak and also the pin, Leaf of Lórien brooch that we have going on. I filmed most of this a long time ago because motivation doesn't exist, but hopefully you enjoy it. I found this, I believe it's a tablecloth at the thrift store for $7. So as you can see, we have quite a bit of fabric. I think what I'm gonna do is look up just a quick cloak tutorial. There's a million of them out there, and find out how much length this way I'm gonna want in order to be able to wrap it. And then with the excess, I'll make the hood. I think this will be pretty straightforward. Okay, I made a mistake. I did all the calculations to know my total length, and then when I went to measure it, I just measured it based off of the length from the nape of my neck down. So it's gonna be about 8 inches shorter than I initially planned. But it's fine, because nothing really matters. And that is a perfectly fine length for a cloak.
For the hood, we have a big long piece that's folded over, and then I'm going to do a French seam along the middle back of the hood. I was able to do a French seam. It was actually my first time ever trying that, and I think it turned out okay.
I've sewn on the hood. I have a nice little seam. You can see the seam here. I think it's fine. So now the final step will be hemming this edge and my bottom edge because it's very frayy, and then that'll be it until I can make the brooch. As I've been sculpting my pin, I realized that I don't actually want any weight on the pin because it's made out of polymer clay and it's not really going to be able to hold this up. So I'm going to be doing like a loop and button on the front of the cloak that's actually going to like hold it on, and then the pin will just be like put over top of that as an adornment versus it being the thing that's actually holding the cloak on. Alright, so I have my loop. For the button placement, I actually want there to be a little bit of overlap here, so if I just do it right on the edge, then the two sides of the cloak aren't actually overlapping too much. So I'll be placing the button a little further in. There-ish. So kind of a good ways in. Final product, cloak. One thing that I did do after the fact was I added in another button, because if this wasn't there, then it this part would swing a little bit. So by adding in the second hidden button, it actually keeps it where I want it to be. I did attempt to dye this a little bit darker. I don't think that it is all that different from the original. I think I didn't use enough dye, but that's okay. I didn't really need to dye it. I was just testing it out. I think it turned out pretty good. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, it is shorter than I had planned because I measured once and cut once instead of measuring twice. And I couldn't cut twice because I didn't have enough fabric left.
Moving on to the pin, I used polymer clay in a silver metallic tone and rolled it into maybe about like a 1/2 centimeter thickness. I then used a tool to sketch the rough shape of the leaf pattern onto the clay before cutting out the bulk of it and then shaping with more tools. To add the details of the leaf, I rolled little worms out of clay and just laid those across the top in the form of the leaf veins. After baking, I covered the base piece with this gloss glaze. I want it to look the most metal-like as possible with a nice sheen. After some trial and error, I decided to go with nail polish for this next part. I mixed a few different colors together to get a good deep emerald green with a little bit of shimmer in it, and this ended up mimicking enamel really well. I used some clay tools to fill in all of the gaps and then let it dry. For the next part of my leaf, there's like this really delicate, pretty wire that kind of wraps around the leaf that, in theory, the pin that attaches it would probably be a part of. So I did buy this silver wire, and I was just doing a rough shape of how this would look in theory. So I think what I'm gonna try to do is get the wire into the shape that I want and then use it almost as like a armature and see if I can coat it in polymer clay that I can then bake. To hold the wire details into place, I drilled little holes using just a very small drill bit, and then I used super glue to actually glue them into place. And finally, I added an adhesive pin back just from the fabric store. Since this isn't holding any weight, it doesn't need to be particularly robust.
I'm pretty happy with how the brooch turned out. It was surprisingly easy to make with just polymer clay and nail polish. It's, you know, if you look closely, it's not perfect. You can see some of the wire like armature peeking through. And like I mentioned before, I can't actually use it to hold the cloak on, so you kind of have to position it to cover up the button if you don't want that visible. But overall, I think it looks pretty good. There's like a nice shine to it, which I really like, and I think I did a good job. And you could do this in like a day for very, very cheap. So if you're looking into potentially buying one of these instead of making it, like, don't worry, you could definitely do this. Overall, I'm really happy with how all these turned out. I think I was pleasantly surprised at how easy it was to actually make the Leaf of Lórien in the end. Also, the cloak was really easy. If you have a big piece of fabric, whether it's like a tablecloth like what I use, or you go out and get fabric, they're super easy to make. And at this point, I have like the makings of a costume. Overall, really happy. Yeah, thanks for watching.